Hey everyone, welcome to the KE Report and another company update from Kenorland Minerals, this time focusing on some of the regional exploration that the company just announced results from on December 9th, projects in Northwestern Ontario. I am chatting with Zach Flood, President and CEO of Kenorland Minerals. Company is traded on the TSX Venture Exchange under the symbol KLD, on the OTCQX under the symbol KLDCF, and the Frankfurt Exchange 3WQ0. Now, I've chatted a lot with Zach on the company's continued strategy here as a prospect generator, also a royalty company with now a couple more royalties put into a subsidiary. But look, we've talked a lot about the majors that the company is working with on a number of projects, mostly in Canada, that those majors are moving forward with as part of that business model. Kenorland is always looking at these new projects, regional exploration to generate targets and bring in some of these partners. I'm going to post figure 1 from the news release on December 9th. Shows these 4 projects in Northwest Ontario that the company just released news on. So, Zach, give us a bit of an overview then of this regional exploration program in Northwestern Ontario, please.
Yeah, so late last year, we staked a number of projects and acquired through option agreements with some local prospectors, tying up around 260,000 hectares of ground in the Wabigoon and Quetico areas of Northwestern Ontario. These belts have a number of established gold camps and mines and systems, including Cameron Lake, Rainy River, Goliath, Gold Lund, to name a few of them. So definitely prospective parts of the Superior province. We were able to tie up all of this ground through, again, mostly staking and some additional option agreements with third parties. Our strategy this year was to screen all of this ground systematically with large-scale geochemical surveys. So we collected over 12,000 till samples covering, the entire projects, and we got that data back this fall and just announced, earlier this week the initial results from that, looking mostly at the gold potential. And we're excited to see that there's a couple large-scale gold anomalies that we're going to follow up on aggressively next year. So yeah, the strategy of going into these areas and tying up as much ground as we can and hitting them with big systematic geochem surveys is again proving to generate targets of potential, and hopefully these will lead to additional discoveries down the road.
So out of these 4 projects that we can see in that map, any of them really stand out to you?
Yeah, definitely. 3 of the projects that we highlighted in the press release were Flora, West Wabigoon, and Algoman. I would say, the Flora project has one of the most compelling anomalies that we've seen in all the exploration that we've done over the last few years. There's around a 7-kilometer long trend of pretty high tenor gold anomalism in an area where the core of the main anomalies has had no previous historical exploration. So that's exactly what we like to see, is an anomaly in an area that hasn't had any exploration, no historical drilling, no mineral occurrences, because we're speculating that signal that we're seeing is due to a mineral system that exists there that has not been previously recognized or discovered. The West Wabigoon project also has a very compelling target on it. Again, multiple kilometers of gold and arsenic anomalism, limited to no exploration over most of that anomaly also. And the Algoman project, there's definitely 2 areas of interest that we're going to follow up on. One of those areas has had more historical exploration, but nothing too intensive. Again, lots of prospecting in that one, not really much drilling. The other target area has had no previous, recorded exploration in it. So I would say every time we go out on a big project that's close to 100,000 hectares and screen it, we're expecting hopefully one target, one area of interest that needs to be followed up on. So pretty good hit rate so far. One of the other projects, Stormy Lake, had some anomalism. We're considering what to do with that at this time, but I'd say it's pretty good hitting, our batting average now on these big regional programs is pretty good.
So, Zach, what other work can Kenorland do here as a company, maybe before you attract or to attract a partner to come in and start drilling?
Well, I'd say, obviously we're going to look to bring someone in because, the regional exploration's done. The heavy lifting is really going to start next year, where we got to go in and work these targets up to drill stage. And then obviously beyond that, the drill programs will be pretty intensive too in terms of the capital requirements. So next step on the projects in 2025 will be infill till sampling, infill geochem sampling, HMC sampling, which is heavy mineral concentrates, and from that you can count gold grains in the sample. So we'll do gold grain counts across the target areas. We'll also fly airborne magnetics and VLF likely as well, which is an EM survey. And then boots on the ground prospecting, just to see, okay, what's the nature of mineralization? Can we find rocks that are mineralized within the trend, and start to get our eyes into the geology there too. So, again, a very systematic approach, and ideally by the end of 2025, we have enough data to start, lining up the initial drill program, which ideally would occur sometime probably early 2026. So it does take, usually two seasons to kind of go from complete grassroots exploration with no data to drill target. And then by the third year, you're drilling these things. So I think that's really important for investors to realize what the timelines are like out here. And this is why we build this large pipeline, because, while we're working these targets up to drill stage, we're actually drilling, 4 or 5 projects in other areas next year. And so we're continuously year after year drill testing new targets that we've generated in the pipeline.
So one other aspect of this news release is the creation of a 2% net smelter royalty on 3 of these assets. It doesn't look like the Stormy Lake project had this royalty granted on it. This is all going into a wholly owned subsidiary, so still more or less within Kenorland Minerals. What is this ongoing strategy here of creating these royalties on very early stage projects?
Yeah, I think, again, it's just to create additional upside and optionality for, while we own the projects 100%, we're able to create a royalty on them, and allows us to be a little more flexible in terms of how we can transact on them going forward. Obviously, royalties are usually separate from, the property itself. So even during a discovery, they can be monetized, and they're a much more liquid asset than, say, a minority interest in a project. So that's really the point, is to try to capture as much value as possible in the event there's a discovery out here, and have more optionality as well.
Hey, fair enough. You're also building kind of a royalty company on the back end with that 4% net smelter royalty on that Frotet project, something we've talked a lot about. What about next year in terms of other projects? As you said, this is the company's strategy. You constantly are working up new projects to generate targets and then looking for partners. What other sort of projects are you going to be working on as we move to next year?
Yeah, so we've got another 300,000 hectares of ground in the James Bay region that we're planning to sample for the first time next summer. So that would be, like you see the results from this summer's work in Ontario, we'd be completing that style of survey up in James Bay. And obviously, we're always looking for additional areas to go after and screen as well. So really, it's just, a matter of scaling. We've scaled up the business quite a bit over the last year, and we'll continue to do so, and keep generating new projects and screening these and bringing in partners to fund the more advanced exploration. And I think the name of the game is to make another economic discovery somewhere, and that's the real way of creating value in the space.
Now, before I get you out of here, I always do like to just remind everybody your capital strategy here, where yes, you're spending some money on these regional projects, but you also do have income because of some of the exploration you're doing on some of these JV projects. So just remind everybody, cash in the bank, and what that churn is in terms of what you're spending on projects, what you're bringing in.
Yeah, I think this year we saw maybe around 5 million sole funded, 20 million from partners. Next year could be similar as well, 20, 25 million from partners, another 5 million sole funded. We've kind of maintained that throughout the last few years in the company. typically in terms of income or revenue that we're generating through management fees and other, potential payments from option agreements and whatnot, it's usually landing around, $3 to $4 million, which again more than covers our overheads, and that allows us to operate the company in a financially sustainable way, and not draw down on our own treasury too much. Obviously, there is that sole funded component, but this year was a little bit more unique in that sense as well, because Centerra came in as another strategic shareholder and provided us with a large amount of capital through the flow through structure. And that's what we spent, largely on a lot of these regional programs. And that's, again, what we'll spend kind of the rest of that next year on additional regional sampling and see where that takes us.
All right, Zach, that wraps us up. Again, Zach Flood, President and CEO of Kenorland Minerals. Click that link in the show notes to visit the Kenorland website, learn more about all the assets that the company is moving forward, and email me any questions you have. Zach, thank you as always for your time.
Thank you, Corey.